I'm so excited for today's project, and I have been thinking about this for months. We're gonna make the most gorgeous and detailed dress using an old bed sheet. Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rebecca, and I redesign old thrifted items, and I show you step by step how to do it. Today we are going to make something very beautiful. We're gonna make a dress out of this old bed sheet. Let me show you. And for this video, I'm using the pattern I made in my pattern making video. So if you haven't seen that video, you can go ahead and watch that and create the pattern for this dress that we are going to make. I will link it down below. I really hope that you guys will enjoy this tutorial, and let's get started. Okay, so we're starting off by splitting up the fabric because I want to get rid of all the stripes that are incorporated into the fabric, and I'm sewing all the flower pieces together so that I have one big piece of fabric. Then I'm ironing all the seams flat and open. Now that I have a big piece of fabric to work with, I'm going to cut out two skirt pieces, and I'm using the pattern I made in another video that I have linked down below. So you can go ahead and watch that if you want to make the same kind of skirt, but you could also use a full circle skirt if you want. I'm cutting out two pieces. There's not going to be side seams on the skirt part, but a front seam and a back seam. Next, I'm going to take the basic pattern that I have made earlier, and I'm going to cut out all the bodice pieces, the back and the front and the side pieces. Next, I'm going to take the sleeve pattern and I'm dividing it in half, and then I'm opening up the pieces so that I can have a big sleeve part, because I want to gather the sleeve so that I can have a puffed sleeve. For this one, you don't need to cut out lining, but for the skirt and the bodice part, you need to cut lining as well. I just cut it in a bed sheet as well. Next, we're going to sew up the dart on the back parts. Then we're going to sew up the middle seam on the back because we're not installing a zipper in this dress. Then we're sewing up the side panels and the front panel and the shoulder seams. And then we're sewing two parallel stitches on the top of the sleeve. Then we're pulling the thread so that the fabric gathers. Next, match up the sleeve and the shoulder seam right side facing each other and sew a seam across the armhole, and then sew the side seams together with the sleeve. Next, you can go ahead and take the skirt parts, and what I accidentally did here is that I actually cut out the bodice part in my skirt. Can you imagine? So I had to fix this, and it was not super easy. I had to patch up the skirt and then sew it, and I actually did manage to save it. So next, I'm sewing up the back seam of the skirt right side facing each other, and then I'm pressing it. Then I'm sewing on the bodice part. And next, I'm going to use those scraps of flower stripes that I cut out earlier, and I'm sewing them together to one long strip. Then I'm sewing two parallel stitches with loose settings, and I'm pulling the thread so that I can gather a long piece of ruffle cape. And this is going to be attached on the bottom of the skirt. Once I'm happy with the gathers, I'm going to sew it on to the bottom of the skirt. Make sure that the ruffle cape is long enough to fit the bottom of the skirt. Next, I'm taking one of those longer strips that I cut out earlier, and I'm folding and ironing the side 1 centimeter in. Then I'm taking a nice lace trim. This is something I found on Etsy, and I'm sewing it about 10 centimeter from the waistline and all across the skirt. After that, I'm sewing on folding it over, and then I'm sewing on another lace trim underneath so that I have a very nice decor around that band. Once I'm happy with the placement, I make sure that the sides are matching, and then I continue with my work. Now I'm going to make a belt, and I'm going to use the same strips of fabric, and I'm sewing the lace trim again inside of the belt on the edges of the belt. When you're sewing the lace on the corners, make sure that you don't stretch the lace, but that you just open up the sewing foot when you are turning around in the corners, so that when you're flipping the band around, it's going to be nice in the corners. Then take the other strip and sew it on to the other strip, right side facing each other, and leave a little gap opening so that you can turn this belt around, and cut out the corners of the belt so that the corners are going to be sharp and nice when you flip it around. I'm taking a chopstick and I'm just using that to push all the fabric through and to flip the belt around. I'm flipping the belt around and I'm ironing it flat and nice and making sure that the corners are sharp and nice. Next, I'm measuring down about 20 centimeters from that previous band, and I'm sewing another lace trim and another band over it, just as I did with the previous one. Then I'm folding the band over and I'm adding a lace trim underneath there as well. Next, I'm sewing up the lining just as I did with the outer fabric, except for the sleeves. So I'm just sewing the skirt and the bodice together. I wanted to have a little cutout in the front of the bodice, so I cut out from the neckline down to where, as far as I wanted the cutout to go. And then I added lace trim along that cutout. After I attached the lace trim with my machine, I went ahead and made sure that the side again matches. And next I took the lining right side facing the dress and I sewed it on along the neckline, and I cut out small snits along the neckline so that it folds over nicely. And then I sewed a support stitch on the lining side. Next, I went ahead and also cut out the cutout on the lining because I didn't do that earlier. And I made sure that everything was matching up. Next, we're going to add the buttons to the dress. So I just found a button in the size that I want to cover my buttons in, and I am going to measure the size of the loops that we want. So to make the loops, you're going to cut out on the bias of a fabric small strips about 2 inches wide, and you're going to sew them up in the middle of the strip, and then you're going to turn them right side out. So you have small spaghetti straps. Next, I'm just measuring around the button that I'm using, and I'm figuring out how long I need the loops to be. I figured I had to sew the loop underneath the lace trim so that when I fold the neckline over, the button loop are going to be on the outside of the lace trim instead of hidden underneath the lace trim. Then I'm folding over the lining and I'm sewing up the cutout on the wrong side of the dress. And I'm doing the same thing on the other side of the dress. Cutout. When I flip the dress around after sewing up the cutout, I make sure that everything is still matching up. Now we're going to sew on the button loops on the bottom part of the dress from the bottom of the cutout and all the way down to the ruffle cape. So I went ahead and I cut out a bunch of loops that I after that sewed onto the outer piece of the dress. And I sewed over the lining over all the loops. And I didn't get any footage of this because when I was filming, my head was in the way, so I'm very sorry about that. Then I sewed up the lining on the other side of the dress. And next I used my serger to do a little rolled hem at the bottom of the sleeves edge, and then I sewed an elastic inside of the sleeves. Next I covered a bunch of buttons and I sewed them on, and I matched each loop to each button as I went downwards because I wanted to make sure that everything is matching up. So after you've sewed on one button, take the loop over and then sew on another button. For the lining of the dress, I just serged the bottom, and you can go ahead and sew a folded edge as well, but I just left it like a serged seam. And then I'm folding the front all the way down, just 1 centimeter in, and I'm ironing it, and I'm sewing it together to the lining so that the lining stays in place. And next, I just did a doubled hem at the bottom of the ruffle cape, about 2 centimeter wide. After I sewed up the hem at the bottom, I did use my iron a bit over the dress to make sure it was nice and smooth, and I was done with my dress. And this is the result. That's it for today's video. I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's tutorial. Please give this video a thumbs up. Comment down below what you want me to make next. I would love to hear your ideas. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more content, and I will talk to you guys next Friday. Bye!